Hi everyone, I'm Artur and welcome to Reimagine 2020. Today I have with me James Simpson from mStable, a decentralized stablecoin exchange and lending platform. So excited to talk about all things stablecoins and lending, I guess. Welcome, James.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here. Really excited to be speaking at Reimagine 2020.
So I guess let's jump right in. How did you get into crypto, and what is mStable?
Yeah, so I got into crypto a while ago when I was living in China. So I worked in kind of a consulting, business consulting kind of data analytics role over at KPMG. And in about 2015, I met a few people in Shanghai who are into the crypto space. And then really wasn't working full time, but then ended up working for a fund in Australia called Apollo Capital. It's specifically crypto based. And I was actually there with the CIO of that fund that we co-founded mStable after kind of dealing with stablecoins, dealing with lending platforms, and realizing that actually we can really unite lending, swapping, and stablecoins into one standard, and in doing so, kind of solve some major friction points that a lot of users were experiencing and are experiencing at the moment. We launched the protocol about 12 weeks ago, seen some really great growth, and yeah, we're really excited about our roadmap as well, and all the exciting things that are happening in DeFi. It's obviously pretty tough to keep up, but we're kind of hoping to contribute as much as we can to that.
Definitely. I mean, congrats on the launch. And so, do you mind just getting into like what does mStable do? How can you tie these you mentioned a lot of different services together into a single standard? What does it actually mean?
Yeah, so really the core of mStable is this idea of a liquidity pool. So we within a smart contract create kind of an AMM, automated market maker exchange. So users deposit stable coins, and then we have a mechanism that allows the trading of those underlying stable coins. And really, as the core can actually form the basis of a whole bunch of infrastructure. For example, from that liquidity pool, whoever deposits, say you deposit 100 DAI to that liquidity pool, you get 100 MUSD. So actually the shares that represent your ownership of the pool are actually stable coins in the mStable system. So we're able to leverage and create a stable coin from the liquidity pool. But we're also able to make that capital within that pool really efficient. And we do that by lending out the stable coins to third-party lending protocols like Aave and Compound, as well as allowing, as I said, the swapping of it. And that generates fees and interest. And all of those fees and interest go to a savings account. So again, we are able to leverage now a savings account from this liquidity pool. So yeah, just from one simple AMM, you're able to have an exchange, you're able to have a stable coin, and you're able to have a high yielding savings account. And we believe this is kind of only the beginning of the kinds of infrastructure that you can build from stablecoin liquidity pools. So we'll be launching other assets as well, like MBTC, which is coming out at some point, and also the Meta token, which is live. We are going to propose as a core team to the community that this becomes kind of a token that backs up the entire system as well. So yeah, hopefully that gives some background. I can go into the kind of pain points that users have felt, and that's why we think this is demanded at the moment. But yeah, I'll leave it there for the time being.
Sure. So do I understand correctly that I, as a user, can essentially deposit my stable coins and earn an interest on it, while and if I want to, I can swap it for different stable coins, and in the back end, you guys essentially generate the interest by lending it out on different lending protocols.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's right.
Got it, got it. And how do you guys then? I guess I'm sure you get this a lot. But how do you compare to, for example, to the likes of Curve?
Yeah, so Curve have a similar at the core. It's quite similar in the sense that it's a liquidity pool. Curve have really optimized, and they've done it really well in creating an efficient stablecoin exchange. That's what their curve, their bonding curve is specifically designed to do. There's a whole bunch of factors that really are designed to make stablecoin swaps specifically really efficient. So I would say that Curve's end is efficient stablecoin swaps. The way that I look at mStable is a bit different, and what we're trying to do at mStable is a little bit different. Swapping is just one element to mStable, and it's a means to an end, and that end is a high interest savings account. So we like to think of stablecoin swaps as an engine for high APY. And another way of thinking about the difference is that mStable is in many respects a vertically integrated curve. So we have kind of lending protocols right at the base, and then we have right at the top a stable coin that emerges from that, as well as kind of proprietary products like a savings contract as well. So yeah, we really love the Curve guys, and I think that what they're doing in terms of specifically stablecoin swaps has been incredibly impressive. mStable is a little bit broader in its offering, and it tries to kind of leverage multiple different pieces of infrastructure from the idea of a liquidity pool.
Got it. And where does MUSD sort of piece into this flow?
Yeah, so MUSD is what's called a meta stablecoin. So it's a stablecoin in that it's backed by other stablecoins. So for people who don't know DeFi so well, there's a bunch of USD representations in the form of stablecoins, and in mStable, there's a MUSD liquidity pool. Within that, there are a bunch of different stablecoins, as we've mentioned, and MUSD is the stablecoin that is backed one-to-one by this pool of stablecoins. So MUSD has value because it is backed one-to-one by existing stablecoins. So the question, I suppose, is why do you want this? Why is this useful? I think there are a couple of reasons. One, it means you can actually be more capital efficient with the underlying assets. So you can still hold a stablecoin. It's really useful for payments. It's still, because of the arbitrage loop, because of the closed arbitrage loop, remains at $1. But the assets behind that are actually being lent out and being used by Compound protocol, and that generates obviously an element of capital efficiency. Combine that with the fact that users are actually swapping the underlying stable coins as well, and that's generating fees. So you're still able to hold a stablecoin that's worth $1, but all of the protocol itself is just being incredibly efficient with its capital and earning and generating fees. A second reason that I'd like to touch on is this idea of diversification of risk. So if you hold one stable coin, all your wealth in USDT or all your wealth in USDC, you're exposed 100% to that stable coin, and if it fails, then you'll have to live with the fact that you held all your wealth in this one asset, and there's not much recourse really in crypto. I wouldn't believe. So the idea of mStable is to create a meta asset, MUSD, that is more secure than the sum of its parts. So if one of the assets fail, we cap the risk in mStable, so only a proportion of the assets under management would be lost. And then the idea that we will propose to the community is to use the meta token as a way to insure against that loss. So that if you're a holder of MUSD and one of the underlying fail, that kind of 1 in a million chance, it hasn't happened before, but it might, your capital will be protected. I think the third thing that's interesting about a meta stable coin is this idea of jurisdictions. So I think even though crypto is really global, if you send a stablecoin overseas, there are really different reasons why somebody in a different jurisdiction may want a specific stablecoin. So for example, in China, you probably want to have USDT. And the reason is because it has really liquid markets on Chinese exchanges. And if you want to offboard into fiat of China, RMB, Chinese yuan, then you would use Huobi's incredibly liquid P2P USDT RMB market. On the flip side, in the US, you probably want to redeem USDC because you can just go to Coinbase and get US dollars back immediately. It's super easy, and it's just more accepted in the US. If you're a DeFi nut, you probably just want DAI or SUSD or some kind of decentralized stablecoin. So the idea of MUSD is it actually is powerful because you have an optionality in redemption. So you can send MUSD anywhere in the world, and the user who might be in a specific jurisdiction, assuming that those stablecoins are in the liquidity pool of mStable, are able to redeem what they want and then go on with their day. And I think this idea of jurisdictions will actually be true also of crypto jurisdictions. So say you have, say Polkadot creates a massive ecosystem of US dollar stablecoins. Certainly, I can see mStable existing on any chain where there's stablecoin liquidity, and people using MUSD to port it over to kind of use that in that specific ecosystem and maybe redeem a specific stablecoin that only exists in say Polkadots. So there are a couple of the reasons why I think meta stablecoins have a bunch of really interesting use cases and demand profiles. Hope that kind of gives some color.
Yeah, definitely. And how many stablecoins are part of the MetaStables basket today then?
So we have 4 that we accept. Right now, it's DAI. Our bonding curve is a constant sum bonding curve, so it means that it's a straight line. It's always 1-for-1. DAI has been trading above peg, so there is no DAI in the basket, but I'm pretty sure there's liquidity in the other 3. And we've also got some kind of pending proposals from community members to add in SUSD, HUSD, and BUSD and PAX as well. So there'll be other stable coins that people in the mStable community are keen to add.
Yeah, my next question was going to be how do you then, if you're essentially kind of diversifying the risk of holding like a single stable coin, but I guess at the same time you always have the risk of what if you bring like the wrong one in, right? So how does the process of adding a new stable coin to the bucket work?
Yeah, so it's all community based. The decisions about what is added into the protocol. The mStable protocol is owned by the mStable community. It's not owned by any company or anything like that. And ultimately, Meta holders will govern it directly. At the moment, it's kind of a rough consensus thing. So we listen very carefully to our community and what they want. And we have a whole kind of rough consensus process. It starts on the Discord, goes to the forum, is voted upon. There's community calls every month, all that kind of stuff. But essentially, people can go onto the governance channel specifically for stablecoin additions, and they propose these are the reasons, gets formalized in a vote. In terms of like the kinds of things we think about, obviously you mentioned diversification of risk. In mStable, it's actually about max weights. So we program in like the maximum proportion any stablecoin can have in the pool. And that it obviously comes into question some like the risk profiles of the stablecoins. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned that that in the future you're planning to also add to create a MBTC.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so MBTC. So I mentioned that we do stablecoin liquidity pools. Some people get confused because they don't think Bitcoin's actually that stable. I get that. We actually don't define stablecoins necessarily as having stable purchasing power, at least in the short term. So that's how most people, I think, define a stablecoin. We actually define a stablecoin as something that that is stable in reference to a peg. So Bitcoin, for example, is wrapped on Ethereum, and we would call WBTC a stablecoin if its peg remains in line with Bitcoin's peg. It's stable in reference to the underlying asset. So that's a bit of background. Our second asset will be MBTC, and we're doing the same thing, creating a liquidity pool of same peg assets, enabling people to swap them. We lend all of the assets out, and we create the same suite of products as well. This will be proposed to the community, and if they accept us to build that, then it'll be launched. But yeah, so we're really excited about that. I think Bitcoin moving to Ethereum is going to be huge. I mean, I think there's so much latent demand for holders of Bitcoin to leverage a bit more from their asset. So if there's ways, I mean, you see on Curve right now, there's great yield farming opportunities with Bitcoin, and even just the fact, like idea of just lending them out in a trustless way, I think would be super valuable. And I can imagine a few other big entities in crypto coming out with their own versions of wrapped Bitcoin pretty soon, because the opportunity is so huge. Yeah. So there's no fixed date or anything about about MBTC, but yeah, it's definitely in the roadmap for this year.
Right. And is that the kind of the next big thing that is planned in your roadmap, or is the token that comes first? Well, I guess my question is, what do we have? What are you most looking forward to with at mStable?
Yeah, so there's been a lot going on. In the coming, the next thing that's coming out is V1 of staking. So the whole point of V1 staking is to bootstrap a community of governors, and there's ways to earn for longer locking up, and all of that kind of data will be pulled over to V2 staking when there's actually on-chain voting, and also free collateralization, both of which will be proposed to the community before they're implemented. But yeah, apart from that, MBTC we're really excited about. We're also keen to kind of investigate a few areas that we've had feedback on. We certainly think that it's not ideal that there's no DAI in the basket because it's been tracking above peg for so long. So we're thinking of ways to improve that and making sure there's liquidity in every asset that we have. We're also trying to make the protocol more gas efficient as well, because it's quite expensive, as it is with most apps, but I think particularly because mStable interacts with so much. So there are a few things that we're excited about. Apart from all of that, we're kind of very keen on pushing forward with decentralized governance as fast as possible. So also in the next couple of months, you'll be seeing a lot about how Meta token holders can get involved in governing their protocol.
So you mentioned DAI being off its peg. Could you just explain why is DAI off its peg, and why is this something that is not kind of why is the market not falling back into balance?
Yeah, so I'm not from MegaDAI obviously, but I can kind of give some thoughts. There's a lot of yield farming opportunities for with DAI. So there's quite a big demand for it as well. DAI's also just been has been above peg for a long time. It hasn't always. There's been times where it's been below peg as well. It has a soft peg, so it's not backed. It is a synthetic asset, so it's not backed by exact US dollars. So there isn't that kind of really easy arbitrage loop, so which makes it a bit more the kind of peg a bit more floating. It's also over collateralized as well, so you have at least $1.50 backing one DAI. So there's an element of there being more value behind it. So I think that probably feeds into it being valued a bit more potentially. And there are people who know DAI much better than I do who can answer this question more accurately. In terms of mStable itself, we have a one-to-one constant sum bonding curve, which is really great for a bunch of things. It's not great for adding stable coins that are above $1. And the reason is because if you're swapping, you get you swap one USDT and you get one DAI back, whereas the market price might actually imply that when you sell one DAI, you should be getting $1.02 of USDT. So there's less incentive for adding into the basket, and when it is added into the basket, people arbit out very, very quickly. So that's kind of I think it creates a bunch of arbitrage opportunities for sure. But I think it also means that mStable itself doesn't always have, or never, I don't think rationally it would have liquidity of stablecoins that track above peg. Conversely, we would have liquidity that tracks below peg.
Right. And you mentioned yield farming. What are your kind of your thoughts on the sort of I guess the craziness that's been happening this year, and do you have sort of some liquidity mining plans with the M token as well?
Yeah, I mean, liquidity mining, I think it's an amazing thing. I think giving users, early adopters, a piece of the protocol that they're using is a really powerful idea. It also, I think, it feeds into this whole idea of decentralized governance really well. Through giving early supporters a token that gives them exposure to the protocol, and then enabling them to have a voice within that protocol, gives those users a bit of exposure, upside exposure to their decision making. So instead of like an income-based economy, this is definitely more of like an equity-like based economy, but that's accessible to all types of people, not just investors or people who have kind of insider knowledge or access. So I think it's pretty powerful. If you look at like communities like Luhaäär and WTFi, it's pretty cool how there's so many thousands of people around the world who are so interested in contributing to a decentralized protocol. And really, I personally think it fundamentally comes from certainly a belief in the protocol and maybe some yields that they've earned through the protocol itself. But also, I think it mainly comes from the fact that they have exposure to a token. So they really actually want to make sure that the protocol goes well, because then their investment will go well. I think there's been some negative things as well in terms of a clouding of protocols' perception of product market fit. So a lot of protocols have just like forked something and rigged something up, or they've just launched something unaudited, and then bang, they have like 400 million in like a second and a half. I think some of that is probably just opportunistic traders moving capital around and earning a token and then selling the token. It's not actually users being like, oh, this is a really cool product, I want to use it long term. So I think people who create protocols need to be careful about using yield farming. I think there's also a really positive thing about yield farming in terms of what I call like bootstrapping product market fit, as in Curve's a lot more useful now that it has $1 billion of liquidity than it was when it had 2 million. So the yield farming that they've done potentially has really actually bootstrapped like awesome utility. So there's another way of thinking about it there. For mStable, we've created a thing called mStable Earn, making M assets really useful in the DeFi ecosystem. So you can contribute on our earn.mstable.org, app.mstable.org/earn, I should say. And you earn Meta for contributing to the ecosystem. And that's usually Balancer or Uniswap pools, because our intention is for mStable assets to be really liquid and useful.
Got it. And definitely looking forward to that. I know you're super busy. You mentioned you have there's a lot going on. A couple of questions, short questions. I'd be interested to get your take on. Today, there's around, I guess, 99% of DeFi lives on Ethereum. What would you say would that figure be a year from now?
Hard to say. It depends on what happens with ETH2 and how easy a potential move over would be in terms of composability and all of those questions. I think we have some serious usability issues with Ethereum right now. Transactions that cost $10 is not scalable. People get annoyed by it. It's too much money. It's too expensive. If the yields weren't so crazy, maybe the usage of Ethereum would be a lot less. So I think like for normal users, those kind of transaction fees are pretty expensive. So I think there's like on one level an opportunity for other protocols who can replicate some of these protocols and deliver kind of a similar user experience, but with far less cost and more kind of throughput in terms of transaction times. I think that's something that was really I think there's definitely a demand for that. I think there's always trade-offs with those when you kind of have less transaction costs and higher throughput, and usually that trade-off is decentralization and kind of and immutability and all of those kind of things. So I think even if Ethereum were to remain as it is today, there'll still be demand. There'll still be a demand for creating these kind of unstoppable goals and data, even if they're actually giving their users that a more central solution I would never be able to give them. I think it can be built on something a little bit less centralized, decentralized, and obviously Serum is an example of that. So the FTX guys are building that on Solana, and then I think also something that Binance is leveraging is their user base. So they've built Binance Smart Chain, and that's another chain that's kind of is going to be directed towards a huge user base and often in a different user base to the Ethereum one. So I certainly see a multi-chain world, and I think mStable is going to build. The way the core team thinks is that we're pretty chain agnostic. We're just going to build where there's stablecoin liquidity. At this point, though, I think the Ethereum still has I would be very, to answer your question, I'd be very surprised if that percentage of activity decreases. You said 99%. I don't think it's going to go below. I'd be surprised if it goes below 90% in a year. Just because I think the secret sauce of Ethereum, apart from the decentralization and the kind of first mover advantage, is that developers love to build on it, and the culture within Ethereum is amazing and really and those kind of things are really hard to replicate. So I guess a few of my thoughts.
Right, and I guess technically mStable is a great example of the sort of what is possible to build on top of Ethereum, right? Because essentially you are, like you said, using so many pieces of the sort of or interacting with so many pieces of the existing infrastructure. My next question actually is about ETH2. Yes or no? Do you think ETH staking will come out this year?
I probably will say no, because it's just taken ages, and I haven't really. To be honest, I haven't kept up completely. So maybe some ETH maxis will get angry with me for saying that, but
surely.
I hope it does. I'm certainly excited for it, but But I'm not holding my breath. I think there are a few things that need to be done, and and the year's kind of fast moving to a close. I'm already almost in October, so I think early next year is where I'm thinking it'll take place.
Well, fingers crossed. And I guess my last question to you is: if you had to describe DeFi in one word, what would it be to you?
One word. That's hard.
One word.
Freedom.
Good one. All right. Thank you so much for your time, James from mStable. This has been a great conversation. Wish you best of luck, and looking forward to the upcoming token launch.
It's already launched, actually. Yeah, but you can check it out. Yeah, oh, good. You can check it out on if you look up mStable. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Have a great day.